Hello Bloomington, I'm Mayor Tim Busse, and this is the Council Minute for the week of September 18th. On Monday night, the City Council adopted the preliminary 2024 levy and the 2024 city budget. The preliminary levy was set at 9.49%, which would fund a general fund budget of $81.6 million. The budget is structured around a set of principles and a budgetary approach that continues our community investments in public safety, maintains the city services that residents value and expect, and focuses the budget requests to align with the city's strategic plan, Bloomington Tomorrow Together. And as we've talked about in the past, the entire budget process has been fully enmeshed into a creative, vigorous, and wide-reaching public engagement process. Staff spent time framing up the budget in terms of revenues and expenses. On the revenue side, next year collections from Bloomington's lodging tax and admissions tax are projected to be back at 2019 levels. That's great news. And that tells me that our hospitality industry is fully back on track after the pandemic. The downside is that revenues from permits are projected to be lower than what we've seen in the last few years. That's the result of fewer big construction projects on tap for 2024. On the expense side of things, staff identified 3 significant issues that will drive city expenses next year and in years to come. The first is labor market pressure. Unemployment in Minnesota is at a record low rate, and competitive salaries and benefits are needed to attract and retain skilled workers to deliver the services that we've all come to expect. The second expense driver is Bloomington's continued commitment to public safety. The proposal to add 6 new firefighters in 2024 to help with the ongoing transition to a hybrid part-time and full-time fire department, as well as adding a new dispatcher for our dispatch center, is certainly a cost driver. And the final cost driver, it's one that's affecting city governments, businesses, and individuals alike: economic volatility and how it affects the costs of materials and services. The preliminary levy increase of 9.49% for 2024 would translate into a 5.6% tax increase for a median valued home. That's because Bloomington has such a strong commercial tax base. For a median valued home, that would equate to an increase of $75.34 for 2024, or $1.45 per week. The lion's share of this proposed increase is for salaries and benefits for city employees. City governments are basically in the service industry. The City of Bloomington does not make widgets. The City of Bloomington provides services like police and fire protection, snow plowing, park maintenance, water delivery, and many others. About 75% of our general fund budget goes to paying the people who provide the services you've come to expect from the City of Bloomington. The budget also reflects the values and the priorities of the residents of Bloomington. This always popular graphic shows the proposed 2024 property tax allocation as if it were a dollar bill. 50 cents would go to police and fire, 17 cents to public works, 14 cents to parks and rec, and 7 cents to community development. That's 88 cents of every dollar that would go to these foundational city services. A reminder, the preliminary levy sets the maximum amount a city can collect through property taxes for the coming year. The City Council can lower that number, but we can't raise it beyond the amount set in the preliminary levy. Over the next 10 weeks, the Council will hear the annual budget presentations from city departments and will work to sharpen and refine that 9.59% increase if possible. On November 20th, the Council will hold a special council meeting to finalize the budget and levy, and the annual Truth in Taxation public hearing is set for December 4th. You've heard over the past couple of weeks that Governor Walz invited Bloomington to be part of a Minnesota trade mission to Japan as part of the 53rd annual conference of the Midwest U.S.-Japan Association. We returned late last week, and I would call the trip a success with more benefits in the offing. The trip itinerary was jam-packed, and it was time well spent. The agenda included a working reception at the residence of the U.S. Ambassador to Japan, Rahm Emanuel, a half day of presentations from U.S. governors and the governors of Japanese prefectures, a very productive lunch with executives from Sanken Corporation, they're the parent company of Bloomington-based Polar Semiconductors, and a meeting with the leaders of the Japanese External Trade Organization, a group based in Chicago that facilitates Japanese-American business connections in the upper Midwest. That was all in the first 24 hours. The next 48 hours included Bloomington participating in a roundtable discussion with a local business group, a trip to a food trade show with the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, a visit to the Osaka Expo 2025 site, and me being part of a panel discussion during a lunch with the Osaka Chamber of Commerce. The highlight of the trip for me was the opportunity to visit Izumi City, Bloomington's sister city of 30 years. Just back in August, a group from Izumi visited Bloomington. While we were there, they rolled out the red carpet for us and for Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan. I was honored to address the 27-member Izumi City Council, and the most significant outcome of the visit was an agreement to formalize a relationship between businesses in our two cities and to explore opportunities for trade. Business and trade opportunities were the main focus of this trip. Governor Walz and the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development first attended the Midwest U.S.-Japan Association meeting in 2019. Since that time, Japanese business in Minnesota has doubled. That shows a significant opportunity for a city like Bloomington as we ramp up our efforts in the international trade arena. Now, that being said, in each of the presentations I made, I stressed the importance of cultivating the relationships between Minnesota, specifically Bloomington, and Japan. I kept going back to that 30-year relationship with Izumi, a city literally on the other side of the world, as an example of what we could accomplish through friendship. Now it's time to answer your questions about Bloomington Forward, the long-term investment plan that, if approved by voters, would support 3 major community projects for better health, wellness, athletics, recreation, and improved natural areas. Specifically, 3 questions on this fall's ballot will ask voters about building a new community health and wellness center, renovating the Bloomington Ice Garden, and enhancing and protecting the 9 Mile Creek Corridor and Moyer and Central Parks. Bloomington voters will decide whether to use a 0.5% local option sales tax to finance $155 million in bonds to pay for these 3 projects. If approved, about 65% of the local sales tax revenue would come from non-residents. Which leads us to this week's first question. What is the difference between paying for these projects with a sales tax versus a property tax? This graphic helps explain the difference. By using a sales tax instead of a property tax to finance these projects, non-residents would share in the cost of paying for them when they shop at local businesses. Through the proposed sales tax, Bloomington residents would pay an estimated 35% or $54 million of the $155 million investment plan, and non-Bloomington residents would pay about 65% or $101 million. The updated percentages just came in from the University of Minnesota Extension Service on September 15th and is using the most recently available sales tax data from the Department of Revenue, which is from sales that took place in 2021. In comparison, if property taxes were solely used to fund these 3 projects, Bloomington residents and property owners would pay 100% of the costs of the proposed projects. The next question is about a popular 50-year-old facility in Bloomington. Why is the city updating the Bloomington Ice Garden? The Bloomington Ice Garden has 3 ice rinks and is one of the busiest ice skating facilities in Minnesota, hosting more than 9,000 hours of ice time and 24 tournaments and events annually. Years of heavy use have taken a toll. Ice and refrigeration systems are outdated and need to be replaced, and lots of critical infrastructure work is needed, including major roof repairs and converting Rink 3 from Olympic to standard NHL size. The city needs to renovate big to ensure it continues to provide skaters and families from Bloomington and beyond with ice time closer to home, as well as continuing to host regional events and tournaments. The renovations will improve access for all users and improve the visitor experience with updated ticketing and concession areas and many other necessary updates. I'll be answering a couple of questions each week leading up to the election, so be sure to tune in next time for more answers to your frequently asked questions. In the meantime, there is much more information on the website bloomingtonforward.org. That will do it for this week's Council Minute. Thanks so much for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe, Bloomington.